And I came back into the workforce and really invigorated, to rebuild my brand and who I was. And from there, I just slowly charged one day at a time, 1 week at a time to get to where I am today. And the environment we're in right now in 2020 has a lot of the hallmarks of 2008, plus layer a pandemic on top of this. And so what I've seen and what I've learned, I'm trying to give back and pay it forward for a lot of those mentors who helped me get through 2008 and come out of it in 2009. And I think all of us have that ability to defeat the average within.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I am your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be an inspiring one. Our guest is a proven sales leader with over 20 years of sales experience. He's a leader at Salesforce and also spent time at Xerox Corporation. He competes in multi-day, self-sustained adventure races in the world's most difficult, some would say treacherous, terrains. He's also leading the charge to defeat average in every aspect of life. Colin Nanka, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Michael. I really appreciate being here.
It's great to have you, and it's a real pleasure and honor to have you. And I'm so excited to have you share what you've been up to around defeating average with our listeners, because I know they are going to want to defeat average in their lives and in their business after listening to you. But Colin, before we get into all of that, tell us a little bit about your career journey leading up to this point.
Sure. So, Michael, it's a pleasure to be here. We've known each other for a long time, and I think we're well overdue for this conversation. I started my career at Xerox many, many years ago, and I started selling on 100% commission. I was at Xerox for 9 years, and then I transitioned to Salesforce, and I've been at Salesforce for the last 15 years. So I've been in sales for many of the years that I've been a professional, and then I transferred to be a sales leader. And for the last 5 years, I've been enabling and training AEs, account executives, and sales leaders how to sell and how to do their job.
Incredible. And I mean, 15 years at Salesforce, I mean, you watched that company go from literally a little tiny rinky-dink company to billions and billions of dollars. I mean, they're more than defeating average over there at Salesforce.
Yeah, I was the 10th employee in the Toronto office, and now in Toronto and Canada, we have, I believe, over 1,500, and I was about the number 1,000 hired worldwide, and I think we're close to 50,000 now. So I started at the company when we weren't sure if it was going to grow to be, a one and done, or grow to be a spectacular company. I often say early in my third or fourth year of the career, I thought, wow, this seems like it has the hallmarks to be like a Microsoft or to be like a Google, and it's going to be interesting to see where that journey goes. And it turned out to be that way, but it wasn't always destined at the beginning. So I've been there for a really long time and, seen the inner workings. It's been a fantastic ride.
Absolutely. And what a training ground, what an environment to both observe people in their work and in their journey, really striving for excellence, and also being a part of the person in leadership that's actually driving that. I mean, it's a remarkable company and obviously has remarkable people like yourself. And so maybe tell us a little bit about how your journey at Salesforce has evolved over time.
Yeah, I mean, I could go back to 2008. I share often, in my first couple of years as a sales professional, I was one of the top producers in the world for a couple of years. I'd come off of being at Xerox for 9 years, which until then had been known as one of the best sales training companies in the world. So I had a lot of great skills. I frankly didn't know technology that well, but I was able to transfer my selling skills to sell at Salesforce. And then in 2008, as we know, the market collapsed, and that was a super challenging year for everyone, including me. And frankly, I finished at 50% of my quota. So coming from being very successful to being highly unsuccessful was a big hit to my ego. And I needed to find a way to dig myself out of that. I ended up taking a trip to Africa, like some people do, to find themselves. And I found some inspiration and motivation there. Happy to chat about that more. And I came back into the workforce and really invigorated, to rebuild my brand and who I was. And from there, I just slowly charged one day at a time, 1 week at a time to get to where I am today. And the environment we're in right now in 2020 has a lot of the hallmarks of 2008, plus layer a pandemic on top of this. And so what I've seen and what I've learned, I'm trying to give back and pay it forward for a lot of those mentors who helped me get through 2008 and come out of it in 2009. And I think all of us have that ability to defeat the average within. Every one of us has something that I think we're average about. I was a late bloomer. There's a number of average things I've been working on for a while. But that's how I think about it, Michael.
That's really interesting. I'd love to hear more about what invigorated you. I know many of our listeners in the conversations I've had sometimes get burnt out or just fatigued on where they're at inside their business, even though they may start out with a vision for where they want to go. Sometimes they get lost, and you found your way and found some new inspiration in Africa. What was the access to that?
Yeah, so there's two things that I think I would talk about there. One is a group of people inside the company that helped me out, and the second is external. So when I went to Africa, and it was a friend of mine that encouraged me to go, he was a senior vice president of another company, and he said, "Hey, I've been through what you've been through. What I did was really just leave the focus on the professional side behind. And I went and did something hard. He climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. I did that too. He said I connected deeply to nature. And so I went on a safari. And then I went to a local school and I gave back. I brought books and toys and tennis balls, and I raised money for them. And it was that trifecta that I put together of exerting myself harder than I'd ever had before. And oh, by the way, I almost quit during that journey up Kilimanjaro 3 times. It was the hardest thing I'd done in my life to that point in time. And then that connecting deeply to nature, you hear often about Japanese forest bathing, very similar. Like it just takes all the cares away. And then when you're grateful, it's hard to be angry. It's hard to be frustrated. And to see the smile in children's faces when you brought them things that they don't have access to on a regular basis, that just really solidified a purpose in me and a fire to come back into my professional life with a different perspective and a different lens, that maybe some of the things I was experiencing weren't quite as bad as I thought, and maybe I could approach things in a more innovative way. And that helped get me back on track. And then at a similar time, we started a breakfast club inside the company with 5 of us, where we met every Wednesday morning at 7. And we sat around a table for an hour, 5 of us, and just had a conversation about some of the challenges we were having, both in work, but outside of work. And it was like a little mini mastering class inside of Salesforce. And we did that for 2 years. And that group of people helped me grow immensely during that time period. So those 2 things really came together to drive me forward.
Incredible. I mean, what a perspective, and what a clear pathway for someone to take themselves on that journey, whatever it might be. I mean, climbing Kilimanjaro is going to the full bar, but then maybe moving yourself away from yourself and setting the focus on something much greater than ourselves, like you did with nature, and as well helping others. It's taking the focus off yourself and others. You find new inspiration, new things about yourself, and new invigoration. I do have a question about the group. Many people meet in masterminds, and there's all of that's kind of becoming very popular and effective. However, there are lots of challenges. I'm really curious. You did it for a very long time. What had that group stick together?
So it was 2 of us that came up with the idea, and we looked for people around the office that were like-minded, we felt would be inspired by it, and we felt would be able to hold themselves accountable to meeting every week. As a younger sales professional meeting in the office at 7 a.m. every day, it was tough to be accountable to that. But we had a conversation about what we wanted out of this group, what the framework for meeting would be, and how we would hold each other accountable to both doing it and get value out of it. And part of it was, texting each other in the morning at 6 a.m. It's like, hey, are you up yet? You're looking forward to seeing you in the office at 7. And so actually that accountability and doing what you say you will do was a big part of it. And then when we were there early. A lot of thought leaders will say, you need to be up before the sun rises, or you need to be up before other people are up. We felt like we were up and in the office before other people were. And so we were ahead of people on borrowed time. And it was a really sharp time and a really sharp way to get into the day. And we would go back at the end of the week and go, what was the best day of our week? And it was often Wednesday, because we were fired up before we started the day.
Incredible. And were there leaders in that group? Was everybody a leader, or did someone have to lead it and keep it going?
Only one was a manager at the time, a new manager. All of us were individual contributors, and everyone has gone on to do pretty cool things. 3 of those folks are actually at the same company. They're not at Salesforce anymore, but they're senior leadership at a startup. And then another one is also a very senior leader at another company as well. So they've all gone on to do pretty cool things. And as we're still great friends to this day, as we talk about it every once in a while, we point back to this as a major turning point in our careers.
Amazing. I think it's something that our listeners, if they're not doing something like that, there's so many advantages to putting yourself around other people who are looking to do things, great things. And so this is another great piece of advice and also strategy, and it's made a massive difference for you. Now, coming back to Kilimanjaro and a very difficult terrain, treacherous terrain, and then you went on to do more treacherous terrains it's amazing if we start to go through the things and places you've gone now. Tell us how that started and how it came about.
It's really been a 10-year journey when I look back on it. It's 2020 now. I took that first trip to Kilimanjaro in 2009. And when I came back from that trip, I was really fired up. And I said, okay, I need to do something like this again. It took me till 2011 to find it. And I had a friend of mine who's the CEO of a recruiting company who said, hey, I'm going to take 10 people and we're going to enter this organized race called Racing the Planet. And we're going to run through the middle of the Sahara Desert, 6 days, 160 miles. And at first I said, no way, that sounds crazy. The only marathon I'd done until that point in time was 2003 in New York City, where I now live. And I just didn't think it was something I wanted to do. I thought it was way out there. But he's the CEO of a recruiting company for a reason. He slowly recruited me. And I entered this race. And halfway through the race, I got overheated, mentally exhausted, and I actually couldn't find my way to continue. And so I pulled out of that race. And I share often that was a major turning point in my life as well, because I had the ability to either say one and done, I can't do this, this is too hard, or, could I put my tail between my legs? Could I volunteer and help my teammates make it to the finish line, and also watch them and learn and see if I could find this template on how to finish the race? And that's what I did. And it took enormous mental capacity for the individuals that finished the race to do it. And so at least I knew what the North Star was for me to be able to finish one of these races. And so I came back, and for the next year, I trained incredibly hard in a bunch of different disciplines. And I went back in 2012 to China to a different race, and I finished that race. And I finished that race by the skin of my teeth. I mean, I was one of the last 10 people to come into that race, but a finish is a finish. And then I would go on to do a number of different races and continue to improve and place higher. But if I hadn't made that choice to learn, we wouldn't be having this conversation, at least about these ultramarathons.
Amazing point. And often people say, talk about failure. What is failure? And, fail forward and all sorts of things. I mean, your example is clear as day. It reminds me of a bookkeeping business owner that recently emailed me, and she had talked about her business. She's been in her business for a couple of years and literally failing all the way along, and then kept at it, almost quit a number of times, and then finally got a piece of information that helped her. It was actually her reading E-Myth Bookkeeper. The author, one of the authors, Debbie Roberts, who's been on the show several times, said, go and network with accountants and tax accountants and CPAs. They're the people who need your services. And she's like, in her mind, she always thought that these people would be like, they already have it handled. They got it covered, right? So here she is failing over here, can't find clients and not finding great clients. And there's this strategy that she discovers that she knew about, but she had this conversation in her head that it was impossible. And she's like, this is it. I have to try this because I got nothing else. And she sent out a bunch of letters. I mean, she didn't go bang on doors and bloody her knuckles, ringing on doors and going door to door. She sent out letters. And a couple of months later, she was onboarding 10 new clients from these, it was basically a turning point in her business. And so she failed for a long time, but she did something that she kept at it, and you kept at it. You could say you failed or you stopped or whatever, and the mental aspect of that, but you chose to learn from it, which I think is remarkable. And is that where you started to, I mean, you're not doing average things. I mean, you're beyond, for most people, beyond average things. Why do you think many of us settle for average?
I love that example that you shared, Michael. I was, I think I was average in a lot of things for a lot of years, and I didn't have the mentorship or the North Star to realize what people are doing. If you think about the iceberg theory, you only see what, the top 10 or 20% of the work people are doing on top. But the grit and hustle under the waterline, like what people are actually doing and how often some of the top performers in the world in any discipline have failed. I think to a story I heard recently about Jimmy Chin, who produced Maru and also Free Solo, and he failed himself, a very accomplished climber. He failed early on climbing Everest. And he says, what I learned in that failure, I've applied to every adventure and project going forward. So it's a decision, right? It's a decision. Will that failure define you, or do you use it as a springboard to reframe into an opportunity and find your path forward? So I think for a number of time periods in my life, I would have some success, I would have some failure. I couldn't really be consistent. But once I was learning to harness it and really use it as a stepping stone and playing the long game, I was getting better at reframing failure into an opportunity. I remember one point running through the middle of the desert late at night, and I felt like I hit a wall, but I was aware enough to realize that I couldn't continue to run. But what came into my mind was a question is, what's the learning opportunity here? And when you get curious, you get into the front of the brain, your inner wisdom, instead of the back of the brain, the fight or flight mechanism. And what I realized is I couldn't run through the end of this race, but I could run for 2 flags, and then I could walk for 2 flags and run for 2 and walk for 2 and really chunk it out and really break it down. And so that mentality has helped bring me out of being average in a number of disciplines into this defeating average method that I've been using.
It's remarkable. And I think there's something about average. I mean, even average, what is average? In your mind, what is average?
I think average is not trying. I think it's inaction. I think it's letting the angst or the frustration get the best of you, especially in this environment. I have my frustrations daily as well. And I realize I get to a certain point in the day that just, maybe you're tapping out mindset wise, and I need to take a break. And maybe that's a walk outside, get some fresh air. It's, taking a 10-minute meditation break, or just realizing that I've hit my max efficiency for the day and I'm just going to begin again tomorrow. I watch, I journal on where I have my best energy. And I know it's first thing in the morning. So sometimes I just shut down and then I just look forward to beginning again the next day. And so that's been a method for me. And people often ask, well, how do you get that extra 40% that you have found in the desert when you're at your absolute bottom? And sometimes it's just discipline. I start every morning with mindfulness for at least 20 minutes. But it's actually difficult to sit for 20 minutes with yourself. So some things don't take physical exertion, they take mental exertion. And so doing that consistently can lead you beyond average.
It's remarkable. Now, you've said many things that take up a lot of time. Running through the deserts and mountains and, crazy races. And for any of our listeners that are interested, check out Colin's website and see some of the races and videos. He's got an amazing video that shows some of the terrains and things that you've covered. But that's a lot of time. You have a young family. You work for an organization which is relentlessly pursuing excellence and success in their field. How do you get the time to do it all?
Some of the things that I've learned is to manage your energy and not manage your time. So one example, in the spirit of the Breakfast Club that we did for a couple of years, and obviously we're in a virtual environment right now as well, and often these conversations are virtual or by phone. I have at least 2 calls per week with different thought leaders in the marketplace, people that I love talking to, people that get me excited, get me fired up. And those are my energizers for the week. And frankly, taking a couple hours out of the work week, but in order to get inspired and bring new insight into the role that I have at the company is a great way to manage my energy and not manage my time. I often do things first thing in the morning before the family wakes up. That's that quiet time, similar to that 7 o'clock hour that I did the coffee group with. And then later in the evening, maybe I go for a walk and I think about some of these things. And so I'm finding concentrated points in time. And the balance is, as you know, our 2-year-old daughter, Tess, I'm not running this year. I wouldn't have been running this year. I wasn't running last year either, at least any of these long adventure races, because my number one focus is family. Maybe next year I'll be able to do another adventure. So within that long-term view, you also need to know when you push and you do something big like these adventures, and then when you sit back and you have to prioritize other things that are more important in life. And for myself, it's family right now.
You're just listening to you, Colin. I can really hear for our listener right now access to their own ability to defeat average. And when I think of our listener, I know them. I've seen them work, and many of them just crush it, right? They work hard. They do so much. They've got lots of stuff. Very mental job, having to figure out people's messes of finances in their business and make sure things are all correct. And it can be defeating, like for them to go through that. And they can get stuck quite easily in a hamster wheel. And yet you've given an access that I see for them to be able to really get what they need in order to grow their business, their career to whatever level that they have the vision. The vision that they have is probably smaller than they think. They could have bigger vision, truly have what they want. Many give up on having what they truly want because they don't think it's possible. And the access that you've been talking about in this episode is the mental aspect of being fresh and having energy. And it's, you have the time you do the work that you do, but taking care of your body from a mental aspect, but as well a physical aspect. I think that's missing in so many of our lives and the work that we do around the desk and on computers. And so the other thing that I know you've talked a lot about is sleep. And I know it's in one of the key things in your Defeating Average, which we'll talk about. I had the opportunity to download that and take a look at it, was sleep. Talk a little bit about sleep, because I imagine you're very physical. You've got a very demanding job. You have a small family. And how do you get the sleep that you need and the rest?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's, I think the 4 ingredients that have helped me be successful and have the energy that I need to have for what I do is the first thing is sleep. If you look at every day, and I look at every day singularly and how it stacks on top of one another and you gain momentum, the first thing is sleep. And then first thing in the morning, it's breathe. It's around mindfulness. It's dream. It's around setting your intention for the day. And then it's movement. And it doesn't have to be excessive exercise, but it's getting outside and moving the body and getting fresh air. And those 4 ingredients, rinse and repeat every day, will help bring you the energy that you need. Let's talk about sleep. Last year, I think it was the beginning of last year, we had been pushing extremely hard in our company. We sprint to do a kickoff for the company where there's 2,000-3,000 people every year, and my team was sprinting for about 2 months. We execute on that, and then we usually come off of that and have a little break, but we didn't have a break, and my team was pushing for 5 months straight. And I started to wake up and just feel like I was 45 at the time, and I thought, maybe this is 45 and I just don't have the energy that I do anymore. And a friend recommended to get an app. I got this this wristband called Whoop, WHOOP. I absolutely love it. It measures your sleep, your strain, your recovery. And so I started measuring my sleep, and I was in the red every morning. It's red, yellow, green, gives you percentages. But I thought, okay, that's how I feel. And then I started following good sleep hygiene practices, getting to bed at a good hour, taking blue light out, reading before bed, not looking at social, doing a lot of those things that are recommended. And 2 weeks later, I got into the green, and I actually felt full of energy. And one of the biggest things that I learned was, if I was going to bed at a specific hour, I would use that plus, to the time that I woke up. But you're not efficient. Some people aren't as efficient at sleep, or most people aren't for that full time period. So I'm about 90% efficient at sleep, which is actually pretty good. But what that means is 1 hour, I'm actually not resting the body. So I needed to back up my going to bedtime in order to get more sleep. And most people need at least 7 hours of sleep. That 5-hour myth is absolutely not true, that people can operate at full capacity on 5 hours. So, if you're not getting, at least 7 hours of sleep, which I would say you actually need to be in bed for 8 hours, you're probably not getting the full energy you need out of your body and your mind. And that was a game changer for me.
I love that. I'm glad you shared that, because it's one of the things that changed for me. It was actually a guest on the show, a sleep expert, and so I've had the Oura Ring for a couple of years now. Actually, I think it's been about a year, and it's amazing when I mean, we've heard of the saying. I think it was Drucker, and I'm sure many others said it. What gets measured gets managed, and sleep is. I mean, I would find is like who knows? Am I sleeping good? Am I not sleeping good? I mean, the measurement of it. You're with your Whoop bracelet is giving you data about how you're doing and what all the things in your life are, how they're impacting. I mean, if you wanted to improve something, how could you really improve something if you didn't have measures in place to know, well, gee, if I change this, does it actually make a difference? And my Oura Ring and your Whoop is access. It's technology that can give us an edge in getting to the sleep and restorative juice that give us the edge in our businesses and our lives, which is so cool. So it's something that I've really enjoyed looking at. And I slept awfully for about 7 years. I wake up middle of the night, not have good sleeps, be exhausted, and I was just dealing with it. And then with the Oura, I started to see that, started to make changes, exercise, vitamins, a lot of the blog, well, actually some of the key things in your blog posts, because I read your blog posts regularly. It's inspiring, and it's also full of great ideas on getting the energy and taking, defeating my average. And one of those things was athletic greens. So I've been taking athletic greens every day, taking some vitamins, vitamin D. So it's like this access really to energy, which when you think about it, it's like if somebody who's exhausted, if you said to them, geez, if I could give you an extra tank of gas right now of energy, would you take it? Yes. Well, that's available to anybody that does the work and puts the thinking into achieving that.
It's mental discipline, right? It's not actually exerting yourself physically, which some people get that mistake. The example I use for myself, and I ask myself two questions before I go to bed every night and I journal on, is what's two things I'm grateful for, right? It puts you in a good mindset. It's often related to family. And the other one is, what is one thing that if I improved it, I could do incrementally better tomorrow? And one of the ones that comes up for me often is reading social, right? We're in a politically, divisive world right now. There's a lot of challenges going on in the world, and they're always going to be there. But sometimes I get wrapped around the axle reading 30, 40 minutes of social stuff before I go to bed, and then I don't have as good of sleep as I can. And I'm also on a screen device in my face, which doesn't allow you to sleep as well. So one of the things for me is like really limiting that time to maybe 10 minutes, or it's doing it earlier in the day so that when I go to bed, I'm preparing the body for bed and for rest. And when I when I do it right, I wake up with the best energy. So having that mental discipline to do things like that and make small tweaks can make a big impact.
Absolutely. And I think having that data with you every day, for me, it helps. Like I've binged watched television at night till 1 o'clock in the morning. And when I look at my day, I'm like, why do I feel so brutal? It's like you didn't sleep enough. And so now I find I'll go, it's a choice, right? Do I want to have a good day tomorrow and have energy, or do I want to watch some, television show? And sometimes I choose the television show because I feel like that's what I want right then. But I know that what I'm doing, and I have data and information, and it's more often I choose energy than I choose doing something else like entertainment or staying up late or something along those lines. It's thinking about it, and like you say, it's not strenuous, it's or physical, it's mental. And I did mention your blog, Colin, very inspirational. I'd love to hear or have you share with our listener some of the things that you're doing that they could take advantage of, access to resources. I know, of course, your blog, but tell us a little bit about how people can get to learn more about you and get to start benefiting from all of the work that you're doing for so many.
I appreciate it. I'm a lifelong learner. I love learning every day. It's one of the things I notice and I keep track of. If I have an hour of learning in the day outside of work, I know that it's a better day for me. So I see a lot of things. I talk to a lot of people, and I come up with ideas that, can just improve that 1 or 2% if you take on some of these ideas, every day, every week. And so I used to write the blog 5 days a week. I decided to pull back to 3 because of the birth of my daughter. Something had to give a little bit. So I had to make that, that priority switch, which frankly was a great thing to do. And so it goes out 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I'm always looking for little small things that, can help me or other people just slowly improve. And, an example I shared with people at work the other day is, and it kind of goes back to this, breathe, dream, move. I mean, you can think about it in, a healthy meal. It's kind of like getting your proteins, your carbs, and your fats. And I'm trying to think of ways that people can really take in the concepts and go, okay, like that's not that hard. And I can do that. I can put it into play. And, one of my readers and listeners recently reached out to me and said, you've helped me think about exercise in a different way. And I gave myself a goal of doing 5 minutes of exercise every day for 100 days. And it was a small goal for them. And they slowly grew over time and got to 20 and 25 minutes. Now they're doing 25 minutes. And some of it's walking. It's simple. It's low impact. But it's made a huge energy shift in their day. And that's why I continue to write. I love putting it out there because it feels good to write. But I also love making a difference in people's lives. And so I talk a lot about how to get to high performance, how to just get started, how to sleep better, how to think about selling, how to think about leading authentically. There's a lot of different concepts. Mostly I'm writing right now about how to meet this crisis that we're all in as opportunity and flip that mindset, just like I did in the desert, running through the middle of the night and taking a lot of those concepts and putting them into bite-sized chunks for people.
Absolutely amazing, Colin. Our listener is a bookkeeping business owner, and they are tasked with helping empower small, medium-sized businesses around their finances. It's an incredibly important job. And so with this information, Colin, with the work that you do, I know it's going to help our audience get the energy they need, the clarity they need, the drive they need to grow a business that they love, that they are satisfied with, that they're excited about. And by doing that, it enables so many small businesses to have what they need, the important information around their finances and an ability to make profits and, pay more staff and hire people and grow. And so, Colin, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast and inspiring our guests to be their best, to defeat their own average. And I really do encourage, Colin has something on his website. If you go and check out his website, of course, we'll have the links in the show notes. He's got a download that he's published called The 5 Ways to Defeat Average in Crisis. I think a very timely download. It's completely free. And as well, you'll get the information that I'm getting that's helping me defeat my own average. And so, Colin, again, thank you on behalf of all of our listeners for joining us today.
It's been a real honor to be here. Thank you, Michael.
And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.